Thank you so much for the warm welcome, and let me get a few questions answered out of the way. What am I doing in London is probably the first thing that you're wondering. Little known fact, my wife is actually Canadian, and she was born in the hospital that's like right there. She was born there because her parents had helicopter mechanic during the Vietnam War, so GM hired him for the factory that used to be in this area. Of course, they moved out like a couple years later. He couldn't stand that job and he opened his own business and so on. But that's the story behind my connection to Canada. So all my kids have Canadian citizenship because I married a Canadian. One of the things that my wife found was a summer math camp for my oldest son. By the way, I have 6 children. So three boys, 3 girls, so they're easily distinguishable. Thank you. But my oldest son is attending a math camp at Western University, and that's why we're here. And my middle son is attending a coding camp at Western University. So that's why we're here. We're gonna go to Burlington tomorrow after their camps end, and I'll be doing another meetup on Friday in Toronto. So that's the story of why I'm in London. Somebody mentioned to me earlier, hey Jimmy, what happened to all your content? What's going on? How come you haven't done like an episode of Bitcoin Fixes This and stuff? Starting in September of last year to June of this year, I took all 6 kids out of school and we traveled the world. We started in Europe, we went to South America, we went to Morocco, Egypt, all through the Middle East, went through Southeast Asia, did East Asia, did Fiji and New Zealand. So we hit like every continent except Antarctica. I got to do this, and part of it is because I'm unshackled from the fiat system. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, is escaping the golden handcuffs, unshackling from the fiat system. So I know Brad already made you raise your hand on who owns Bitcoin and so on, but I'm more curious about this question. How many of you work a job where you're working for somebody else and you have an annual salary? Okay, that's most of you. How many of you own your own business or, okay, all right, so that's it. All right, so it's about half and half. Okay. The reason I want to talk about that is because in many ways, the fiat system is very pervasive, right? It sort of forces you into certain behaviors and so on. And, if you watch the last 3 years, you saw how much compliance that they could sort of force through essentially these attack surfaces in your life, right? If you have a job and you're depending on that job and they threaten that job, you'll do pretty much anything to keep that job. I think as Bitcoiners, one of the things that we have to do is focus on getting out from under that fiat system, because it is very much sort of like all-encompassing and captured. Have to stay. I call it like Hotel California. You guys know that song from the Eagles? You can check in anytime you like, but you can never leave. And the Eagles wrote that song because they were in California, and this was the California lifestyle that they had become accustomed to, and you can never really leave it. It's sort of like this black hole. And the thing about the fiat system is that it's in many ways very attractive, right? Like you have a steady income. You get a paycheck every 2 weeks, and you don't have to worry about where the next dollar is going to come from and how you're going to take it. So a lot of people voluntarily go into Hotel California, essentially. You go into the fiat system wanting to be, I don't know, a lawyer or an investment banker, or working for a company doing marketing or engineering or whatever. It's attractive because of the predictability. But at some point, as you go through it, and I'm sure many of you that are in salaried jobs recognize this, feel kind of stuck. You feel kind of trapped. This is what that song Hotel California is about. You kind of grow disillusioned because of the bureaucracy, because of the ridiculous rules, the political machinations that are going on all over the place. And I'm here to tell you that a lot of that is due to fiat money. This is characteristic. In fact, there's sort of like a debasement of whatever it is, and people stick with it because of the sunk cost fallacy, right? Like, I've already devoted 10 years into this, not going to give it up now, right? This is sort of like the justification that we get. It's pervasive throughout the fiat system. You might have a service that you've used that was really good, and then it slowly starts degrading as they cut costs or have to deal with inflation or have to deal with just the normal fiat stuff of bureaucracy and added costs and so on. It's characteristic of the fiat system. There's a lot of mechanisms they use to sort of keep you shackled to your job. If you think about it, if you have a job, if you have a W-2, I think it's called a T4 in Canada, you're essentially married to your job, right? Like it's very hard to let go. And you get a whole ton of benefits by having that. And not just like benefits. In the US, you get health insurance and things like that. There's other benefits, I'm sure, including unemployment insurance and things of that nature. It might be a level up here like it is in Canada where healthcare is given by the government, but that's just shackling you to the government, right? There's also retirement accounts, in the US, that's a 401k. I think here it's called a pension. There's lots of stuff like that. There are also all kinds of free perks depending on the company that you work for. Maybe it's something as simple as free coffee in the coffee break room, or something more elaborate like free oil changes if you work for Google, or haircuts whenever you wanted, and massages. These are all things that sort of entrap you, that get you to stick to a system, and really they're enslaving you. And all of that is there to trap you in the system that you're in. It's to keep you there. It's to make sure that you comply. And it's all funded on debt. And it's not just the money, because the money itself is debt, right? Like the literal US dollar, most dollars in the system, it's just debt on somebody else's balance sheet. The actual money that you make is debt. But you also get access to a lot of debt. In the US, if you have a W-2, it's way easier to get a mortgage. And I'm sure here, if you have a T4, it's way easier to get a mortgage as well. It's access to this stuff that keeps you in the system. If you have a dream to go do something, right, start a business or something like that, you're prevented because it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do about healthcare? What am I going to do about this? What am I going to do about that? I realize in Canada's system, it's one level higher. So it's more like, I can't leave Canada because then what happens to my pension? This is something my in-laws are going through. They have a pension. They don't want to give it up because you have to stay 183 days a year in Canada or else they don't pay you. This is the compliance that they use to keep you in Hotel California. But there's a price to pay for all of this. That's something that we really need to think about. There's a lot of beliefs that you end up adopting because you're working for somebody. And this is something that I realized when I finally got out of my last fiat job. That was 2017. I finally quit my well-paying programming job working for a Bitcoin company. But even there, I realized, you know what? A lot of my beliefs were in line with whatever the company was trying to accomplish. That's not good, because that's not necessarily truthful. And if you're not being truthful, then you end up kind of with messed up values. There's also compliance. A lot of the stuff that you get is based on your compliance to whatever authorities want you to do. I don't know if you saw during COVID, but there were tweets by people saying, okay, well, if these people aren't getting vaccinated, then we should just like not let them into the hospital in the emergency room. This is the price that you pay, is all free services end up that way. The highest ranking North Korean defector is Tae Young-ho, and I got to speak with him a few years ago at the Oslo Freedom Forum. He was a diplomat to, I think, the UK. He managed to escape with his family and so on. One of the most interesting conversations I ever had was with him, and he was telling me, okay, this is how Kim Il-sung came to power. Basically, he offered everything for free. You can have a job, you can have healthcare, you can have housing, you could get all of it for free. The price, of course, was compliance. And as soon as you deviated from the party line in any way, shape, or form, sent to the camps and made to do manual labor or whatever. Our current system, the more sort of socialist it gets, the more free stuff gets handed out, the more it gets closer to tyranny. And that's not something that most people really recognize about their work. Another big price that you end up paying is your dreams, right? Like what you want to accomplish, what you want to do. Most people sort of scale back their dreams based on whatever career that they end up in. It's okay, well, I guess I could make partner. Let's go for that, instead of some of the stuff that you wanted to do when you were younger, which might have been changing the world in some way, inventing something, starting a business, or having a large family. Like, you give up whatever for the sake of the dreams that they give you. Another price that you pay is oftentimes your moral values. A lot of people end up compromising to get up in the hierarchy. A lot of these organizations end up being very political. You kind of have to act like a sociopath to get there. And ultimately, you kind of lose your soul. You see that sort of dead-eye stare, right? And I'm gonna go back to the song again. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. There are so many people that are just checked out at work, riding it out until they can retire. Are they even people anymore? They're almost automatons, right? Just going through the motions just so they can finish. It's that sort of mentality of slavery that I'm talking about. You're so demoralized that that's all you do. So how do we break free? How do we escape from this system? If you imagine yourself in a prison, what would you do if you wanted to escape from prison? First thing you would do is to plan and get all the materials that you would need to actually escape. You need to save, right? Get out of debt, because that's the first step. If you don't have any room, and if you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's going to be very difficult. But we have this thing in Bitcoin that allows you to save money and accumulate wealth. And you have this ability to plan for the future. Now, you might be in this fiat job, and that's okay. As long as you have a plan to get out of it, you can escape. If you're also stuck somewhere and you're trapped, you need to be looking for opportunities. That dead-eyed stare of your coworker or whatever, you don't want to be completely sort of oblivious to the world. You have to constantly be looking for different ways to get out of the system. What are some things that you can do? What are your gifts and talents? What are some things people are asking you to do that maybe you can charge money for? This is how you can get out, is by looking and focusing on what value you can provide to other people. And a third thing is to start paying for stuff. The way they get you addicted is always with free stuff. Free stuff is how you get stuck. Free stuff, the first bit is always free, and you don't really know the cost for the rest of it. But think about the free stuff that we've all gotten used to, right? Our Gmail accounts, Facebook accounts, guess what? You're the product. You're getting sold. They're manipulating you. They're using the search results to get you to buy stuff that you wouldn't otherwise get. You're being enslaved through free. So pay for stuff. That, believe it or not, is a very powerful mental shift. Fourth, take personal responsibility. Having healthcare insurance is good, but that doesn't mean that you can eat donuts every day. It's something that a lot of people use as an excuse to not be healthy. If you take personal responsibility for stuff, and instead of relying on insurance, relying on your own character, that's the way to escape, because any sort of weakness can be exploited to cause dependency. Finally, if you have the stomach for it, become an entrepreneur. That's the real way to escape. When you're actually directly interfacing with the market, you don't have all of this politics and all this other fiat crap that you have to deal with. It's honestly better for your soul, because you're actually providing something to somebody that people want. If you want to escape from the fiat game, right, the fiat life, you're going to have a lower time preference. Think about the future a lot more. But I promise you it's worth it, because there's a lot of depressed people out there that are living that fiat life, and I wouldn't want you to get there. I wouldn't want that on my worst enemy, to have that dead-eye stare. That is basically the main idea, is that you can break free and that it is possible once you have Bitcoin and a savings technology.